sort this out later. All right, this is the prize for the sermon this morning. I will tell you how to get it. Good morning. My name is Kenny. I'm one of the pastors here at Revo. Welcome to our church service. It's a wonderful privilege to have the opportunity to share a message on Mother's Day. When I prepared the message this morning, I felt the message, the sermon, would be incomplete without the voice of a mom. So what I have done is I asked two moms from our church, who is their favorite mom in the Bible. And one of them spoke in the first service, and we will have the second mom speak in this service when we look at the second moms in the Bible this morning. So this is what she said. That was from Susie Olieruk. So she picked Naomi. This is what she said. Well, I love the way Naomi takes Ruth in as her own daughter. And even though she claims to be bitter because she lost her husband and sons and has no one to provide for her and Ruth, she was determined. She was a determined woman who trusts that God has a plan and will provide for them. She is also selfless in allowing her daughter-in-laws to return home to Moab. The question I want to explore together in this sermon was, for a mom who knows God, what characters have they got? What do they actually do? What kind of wisdom they actually have to offer to the next generation? So these are the questions I want to find answers in this sermon this morning. Now let's have a look at Naomi to see what situation she was in at that time. So Naomi was from Bethlehem. The whole household moved to Moab because of famine. And there, unfortunately, her husband died. And then later on, her sons married to the Moabites. And their sons died 10 years later as well. And she was left without her two sons and her husband. Now, the writer is trying to tell us something very important. Now, in those days, women, their social status are connected, are tightly linked to the man that they are married to the men in their household. So men can own a property, men can inherit the inheritance from those who passed away. And for women, they need to have their provision and their supply and their support all come from their relationship with a man. So the author in the Bible, in Ruth chapter 1, was trying to tell us they are in a very dire situation. There's no man in the household. They are in a very bad situation. And it was at that point, Naomi, she noticed back in Bethlehem, God is providing food to the people. That's why she has chosen to set out back to Bethlehem to get food, to nourish her household. And one thing you can pick up from Naomi is a mom who knows God, they chase God's provision to nourish their children. They chase God, they're sensitive, they know where God is working, and they will chase the provision of God to nourish their family. The moment when she and Ruth went in the town of Bethlehem, everyone from the town came out and saw them. Over 10 years, they have not seen Naomi. They wonder, is it Naomi? Is it you, Naomi? And that's when she said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. Now, Naomi is a beautiful name. It means pleasant. But Mara means bitterness. What Naomi was trying to tell the people from her own town is, well, I'm not the Naomi that you knew 10 years ago. I'm a completely different person now. Life has not been pleasant since I left Bethlehem. The author was trying to paint a very sad picture for us to understand. They are in a very harsh circumstances at that time. Now, but it was at that point her faith actually come out. She has chosen to go back to her hometown to seek God's provision. And here is what Ruth said to her. Well, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. It was just halfway to Bethlehem. She asked Ruth and the other daughters-in-law, go back to your home country, which is Moab. Find a husband to marry. Don't follow me. There's no hope with me. And at that time, Ruth told Naomi, you people will be my people. Your God will be my God. For Ruth, she came from Moab. They have a different national religion. They believe something else. They don't have the same faith as Naomi. But at this point, she turned around, turned to God because of what her mother-in-law has done on her. She loves her. She is selfless. She don't want to carry her to Bethlehem. If she stays in Moab, she has a good chance to marry to another husband. She also blessed Ruth. She said to Ruth, blessed, you will find rest in the house of another husband. But Ruth refused to go. If Ruth goes to Bethlehem, what is happening is she's not supposed to marry an Israelite. Israelites, they're not allowed to marry a Moabite. They are not supposed to get married. She'll be lucky to find a husband there. That's why Naomi asked her, well, you go back to your home country, find another roof to live under. You will be provided. And it was at that point she realized, well, Naomi, your God is different. For your deed, for your loving action, for your selfless action, I turn to your God. You know, a mom who knows God, they have a contagious faith. A faith that they can pass to the next generation to come. A faith through their loving deeds, through their kindness, they will be able to pass it on to the next generation. That's the second thing we pick up from Naomi. And then when they were in Bethlehem, on their first day of looking for food, Ruth, of course, being the younger one, was sent out to the field. And then she went to a field owned by Boaz, who later became her husband. And she spent a long time, a long day there in the field picking up, gleaning. Gleaning means you're picking up the leftover during the harvest season, just picking up whatever left there and take it home and eat. And it was a long day, and then she went home and told Naomi what happened, how she has been treated and protected respectfully. And Naomi asked her, who was the owner of the land? And it was Boaz. And Naomi, all of a sudden, know what is happening. She said to Ruth, well, our Lord has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. Boaz is our close relative, and he's one of our guardian redeemers. Who is the guardian redeemers? Well, guardian redeemers is those people who is the relative of the family, in the extended family. And they can marry the widow and carry their inheritance across a land or property, but they do have the obligation to continue to look after the widows and the women in the family. That's how the Old Testament law is set up to protect the widow. For Naomi, immediately she picks up, well, hang on, you went to a field to pick up food. There are so many fields in Bethlehem. How come you end up in Boaz's field? Immediately she knows God is working. She see it wasn't a coincidence that Ruth ended up in the field of Boaz, picking, protected, respectfully treated. She knows it was God working behind the scene. She knows it straight away. And that's why she said, oh, God has been blessing us. You know, a mom who knows God, they not only chase the provision of God, they not only have a contagious faith, but they are also able to trace the evidence of God's work in their life. They know what God is doing. They can see what is coming from God, what is not. When Ruth went to that field, she knows, well, this is Boaz's field. He is our guardian redeemer. We are going to have provision. She even advised Ruth how she should approach Boaz. And eventually, they got married. A mom who knows God, they know when God is working, what God is doing, is able to point the next generation to work and move forward in a direction where God is leading. That's very, very important to know. It's amazing what you can see from the book of Ruth about how Naomi can be so sensitive to God's work in her life. It's unbelievable. Now, the next mom I want to talk about is Jochebed. So the first question probably many of us will have is, who is she? Now, don't worry if you don't know. Don't feel guilty if you have been Christians for over 20, 30 years. Because I actually posed this question. Oh, where's my question? Oops. Oh, this one. I posed this question in the pastoral team. Well, I confess I didn't know either. So I asked the pastor, without opening the Bible, can you tell me who is Jochebed? The first one said, no, I know the name, but I don't remember who he is. The second one said, I'm going to say the book of Judges. Sorry, it's not in the book of Judges. The next one said, no, laugh out loud. That's the answer you get. Now, when I tell you who is Jochebed, you will be laughing. Because all of you know what she has done, but you probably won't know her name. I'll explain to you why we don't know her name. And then the other person just simply no, exclamation mark, a bit proud of his answer. The other one say, well, like someone else, I know the name, but I can't place the context. It's definitely the Old Testament. That's your hint. It's an Old Testament mom, not Judges. All right. So if you are able to tell me the answers, this is all yours. Ooh, Amanda. Moses' mom, well done. Hey! Absolutely amazing. This is actually one of the mom recommended by one of our church mom. So can I invite Pat C to come up? As I said before, the sermon and the passage this morning will be incomplete without the voice of a mom. So Pat, well, thank you for joining us on stage this morning.
No worries.
Yeah, as we know, some of us know you. You are a mom with more grown-up kids, and obviously you have your day-to-day challenges. Can I ask you, what might be your day-to-day challenges as a mom for teens and adults, and how do you manage those challenges?
Okay, I think most of you know I have teenage girls, 17 and 17, and a son who's just turned adulthood, rather. So he's just turned 20. And I think when they were younger, people used to say, oh, it's, parenthood or motherhood's really tough. And now your kids are older, I'm sure it's a lot easier. They can feed themselves, they can take care of themselves, even drive themselves sometimes. But I actually find that this phase of motherhood and parenthood actually quite challenging. And I think it's to do with the fact that they're on the cusp of transitioning from teenagehood to adulthood, and they're discovering themselves, but they're also sort of, asking a lot of questions and trying to find their way. And so I'm finding that I'm also on the cusp. I'm also having to transition in my motherhood from things that I used to know and, could do easily or maybe not so easily, like if they were younger and they were hungry, they'll cry, or they'll tell you, so you feed them. If they were dirty, you could see or smell, so you sort it out. But now as adults, it's harder. As young adults or teenagers, they don't often tell you what's going on in here. You can't see it, or sometimes you can see certain hints of it, but you don't really know what's going on. So I find acknowledging that I'm at this cusp was the first way I could try to cope and deal with it, because if I tried to hang on to my old ways and try to be a mum and parent the way I used to, that often didn't work anymore. Either they'll tell it to you or you'll find out yourself eventually along the way. So that was one thing. Second thing, which I'll share a bit about later, was this concept of letting go. So that's really hard, but I'll share a bit more in the next question, I think. Yeah. And the third one, which I really has been on my heart, and I'd like to share with all mums and maybe all women and everyone, really is about one of the coping ways I've been learning is self-care. So I think as mums especially, we push ourselves a lot, we give a lot to our families and our children, but maybe the best thing we can do is self-care. And a friend of mine recently posted on Facebook, she's a psychologist, and she said self-care is really, doing things that keep you grounded or keep you healthy emotionally, spiritually, physically, But there's a key importance, and self-care is not just about the actual activity itself, but it's the outcome. So we often think self-care, the first example is getting more exercise or getting more, doing things that will keep you healthy. But if you find that you're doing it because you're just ticking a box, or after doing it you find yourself really more depleted, for example, then that's not quite self-care. So maybe as mums, just picking things that may be small, just that nourish you. And it could be as simple as, let's say exercise. If running's not your thing, then pick something else, or something that's a bit more, gives you a bit of that pleasure and the incentive to do it. Right. Recently, I've been trying new recipes. I find dinner time stressful. I don't know about you, but I have to cook every day, and it's not always easy. But I've been cooking things and trying stuff that have nothing to do with nutritional value. So making lots of desserts, trying a new recipe, tweaking here, or if you've heard of kombucha, fermenting tea, or trying all the different flavors. And hey, there's a lot of sugar involved, but it gives everyone in the family a lot of pleasure. I find pleasure in tinkering and having this mini lab in my house. So yeah, just self-care and being kind to yourself, to acknowledge that we don't have it all together and we need to nourish ourselves.
Yeah, what an advice, isn't it? Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you is, there are a lot of moms in the Bible, they face their own challenges. Can you tell us who is your favorite mom in the Bible and why?
So I sparked the whole debate about who on earth is this fella. I picked Moses' mom. Many of you know the story, but she's not mentioned a lot in the Bible, actually, and I think her name only appears once later on in Exodus or something.
I will tell.
Yeah, you will tell us. But, so she's mentioned in Exodus, the story of how during the time when Moses was born, the Pharaoh had an edict to say the firstborn boys must be killed, the Jewish boys. And so the thing that struck me about the whole story was when she and her husband defied the Pharaoh's orders, and they hid Moses. They hid Moses for the first 3 months. I don't know how you hide a crying baby, but they managed to. And then when the 3 months was up and they realized they couldn't do it anymore, she did something really incredible. She made a little basket and she floated her baby down the Nile. I don't know if any mum can ever be as brave as that, to put a 3-month-old in a homemade basket and just let him go. And so what struck me was she was extremely patient and, she planned it all. So first 3 months, she took care, she had to nurse him, feed him, keep him quiet. But then when it was time to let him go, she made this really, as best as she could, I guess, a basket that was waterproof. She put him in the reeds so that maybe he wouldn't get too jostled around. She planted Miriam, her daughter, at the side to keep an eye out, and then waited till the Pharaoh's daughter came to the river to bathe and all. So she did everything she could as a mum, She was really patient and she planned it all well, woman after my own heart. But she was also very courageous because she could not guarantee what would happen to Moses after that. The basket could have sprung a leak and he would have sunk. The Nile crocodiles could have got him. Pharaoh's daughter, if she saw Moses, she could have said, "This is a Jewish boy, let's kill him." So many things she could not guarantee. She'd done what she could, but she could not guarantee the outcome. But she had faith. She had faith that God would see it through, and I think it did. God showed his mercy, and Moses was able to be nursed by her and brought, even though she couldn't acknowledge him as son, she could take care of him, and he grew up to be a man of God. Yeah.
Great. And if you have to pick one saying from the Bible about Jochebed, which one would you pick and why? And do you have any word of encouragement for mom at your family stage?
So the saying I'll pick is actually not from Exodus itself, because Exodus doesn't really have many quotable quotes. It's from Hebrews, the list of witnesses, people who had great faith. And Moses' parents, so his mom as well, is actually listed in Hebrews 11:23. And it goes something like, by faith, Moses' parents hid him for the first 3 months. And they were not, because they saw that he was no ordinary child. He was, someone that God had chosen. And then they were not afraid of the king's edict. And I think sometimes when we see the words, they were not afraid, you would think that, wow, how can they not be afraid? If they had been found out during those first 3 months for hiding the baby boy, they themselves would have been put to death along with the boy, or floating him down the Nile. How could they not be afraid? So maybe a way to look at it is, in some of the other translations, they say they braved the edict or they were not daunted. So there's probably human fear, like all of us when we parent, but sometimes you have to recognize that fear but not let it overcome, but rather let your faith in God and God's faithfulness overcome that fear. And so that's part of sometimes letting go, I think, in parenting. So yeah, that's my word of encouragement to mums today, that we do all we can, but sometimes you just have to let go, not in a give-up kind of way, but let God. And so by faith, not have fear. And the other thing is self-care. Go think of something that will nourish you today, and I encourage you to try and do that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Pat. Yeah, what a words of wisdom. Yeah, thank you. So I think it's really deserves our attention to look at Jochebed in particular. Now, since Pat has already elaborated on some of the context, I'm not going to say too much on the context, but do remember two things you probably notice in the book of Exodus is one of the main reasons why many of us actually know what Jochebed has done, but we don't actually know her name. It was the intention of the author. If you look at Exodus chapter 2, that was the main story of Jochebed, Moses' mom, what she has actually done. Now, throughout the whole chapter, Exodus chapter 2, her name was never mentioned. So I have to put a bracket there to tell it is actually talking about Jochebed. It was always using she, Moses' mom. Her name was never mentioned. It wasn't until Exodus chapter 6 and in the book of Numbers, when they map out the family tree, that's the time when they mention Jochebed. You wonder why. Now, the name Jochebed means God's glory, the Lord's glory. For a Hebrew writer who put the Bible together, why are they hiding that name? That name is so important. It's important for people to know it's God's glory. Why is she hiding the name? I think one of the main reasons is what Jochebed has done. Her actions speak much, much louder than her name. People remember what she has done to the next generation, her son, more than what her name means. And I think that's very important. As a mom who knows God, they fear God. That is the one thing you learn from Jochebed to start with. You fear Lord, you protect your children. Be creative, do everything. Be strategic to protect your children. Fear Lord. So she placed the child in a modified basket, take the normal household item, waterproof it, send it to the river. It was a heart-wrenching moment for a mom who put a 3-month-old boy in a basket, sent him away, watching them going, not only leaving her hand, but leaving her presence. Now she was lucky because Pharaoh, his daughter, was there, bathing, pick her up, take her home, and nurture her. And later on, she was called to be the mom for 3 to 4 years normally in those days. And by the time 3 to 4 years after, when Jochebed has to return Moses to Pharaoh's daughter, she's got a name. Now you wonder, how do they call her over that 3 to 4 years? I don't actually know. They must have a way to call her. But the person who wrote the Bible, it was at that point when the baby was handed over. She explained, Moses means I drew him out of the water. I suspect the writer is trying to tell us the whole rescue has God behind. The time when Moses come out, become a leader, that's the time when you see it was God's glory behind. The writer thinks this action is more important. It wasn't until after later in the story, the writer explained that means God saved, draw him out of water. That's very important. It was God's glory behind that saved Moses. And by faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born. They saw he was not an ordinary child. You know, for Jochebed, they know this boy looks very different. God must have a purpose in him. They must take up the courage to face the Pharaoh at that time, to protect this boy, nurture this boy, and build this boy. Who would have ever thought this boy, born as a slave, end up in the palace, receive the best education compared to everyone in the country? God has a plan to protect this person. Mom who knows God, they will be creative. They know what to do. They will protect their child from the Pharaoh in their generation. Very, very smart. When Pharaoh issued an order, she took up the courage to protect. Very creative, very clever, very mindful. Now, the thing you need to notice is with Jochebed, like most moms, love her children, protect them. But this is not only just about protection, it's also about, for us, we need to ask the question, who is the Pharaoh of our generation? Who is the Pharaoh of our kids' generation? Who are those people? It could be internet. It could be energy drinks. It could be pornography. It could be a newly defined definition of marriage. It could be a newly defined gender identity. It could be a new definition of how the world come about. What's the origin of the world, etc., etc. There are plenty of things they serve as Pharaoh in our generation against our kids. As mom, the question is, how can you creatively, intelligently build the foundation of your child so they're ready to face the Pharaoh of their life when they grow up?